Earlier this month, on one of those days which was suffused with scorching heat, I was out running errands out in the suburbs, and as I was making my way from point A to point B, I saw that I was approaching a person stretched out across the sidewalk in that sweltering sunlight, just laying there on the sidewalk. And as I drew near, I will not mislead you, my initial response was one of anger. I was angry to see that I was approaching this. Not because he was in my way and I was going to have to walk around him, and not because of the unseemliness of someone just laying spread-eagled on the sidewalk. No. I was angry because, in all honesty, I knew, owing to basic decency, fundamental integrity, that I was going to have to stop, break stride, and see if he was okay. And the fact is, the truth of it is, that the welfare of every drunk and every junkie out there in this city really shouldn't have to be my concern. I have enough imposed upon me already. And so do you. So when I have to take time and deal with someone who cannot take responsibility for themselves so that they end up prostrate on the sidewalk like that, yes, that can make a person angry. But I had to stop, because as I say, there he was, laying there, metaphorically, one hoped, dead to the world. I stopped and I looked at him and I said, "Hey, bud, are you okay?" Nothing, no response. I tried to train my vision to see, as unobtrusively as I was able, if there was any kind of respiration, to see if he was breathing without getting too close. And I couldn't tell. But as it happens, I did notice on the back of his neck perspiration. And that's when I realized, oh, well then, whoever this is, he is at least still alive. Corpses, as a rule, do not perspire. All right, he's alive, ergo, he'll probably be fine. And I went along my way. I will not kid you. And as I went along my way, I continued to think about this person, this unfortunate individual who, for whatever reason, ended up in that position. Thinking of him basically baking there on that sidewalk. And whereas he might well have been alive at that juncture, who knows, who knew for how much longer. I went along my way, as I say, ran my errands, and then with that notion in the back of my mind of the well-being of this individual, I kept thinking back to him, and finally, reluctantly, begrudgingly, I decided that I'd better go back and check on him just to make sure. So I ran that errand, made my way back there, came to that street corner, hoping that when I peeked around the edge that he would be long gone, having woken up and stumbled away. No, he was still there. I could see him plain as day. Now I was faced with the question, as you can well imagine. What are you going to do? What to do? What should I do? As I say, he was metaphorically dead to the world. There was no getting him up. There's no waking him up. And how do you approach a complete stranger in those straits without really knowing what those straits are? You could go to arouse someone back into consciousness only to discover that that person is a complete wingnut, a madman, a lunatic, who is very much displeased at having been awakened from their comatose serenity. You never know. And I didn't know. I did not know what to do. So, I made the mistake of going to one of those little mini-marts attached to a service station on the corner there. Won't name any names. It was on the corner of 122nd and Halsey. I went inside, and thankfully there were no other customers in there at the moment. It was just the clerk and myself, and I explained the situation to the clerk. I said, there's someone out there on the sidewalk in this sizzling, smothering heat. They're unconscious. They're obviously in need of some kind of assistance. One hesitates to call the popo, don't know about calling an ambulance. I know there's a medical facility across the street, but I don't know whether to go and consult them. I'm not really sure what to do. And eventually I just sort of trailed off because I noticed that the clerk wasn't saying anything. The clerk stood stock still motionless behind the counter, unblinkingly meeting my gaze, staring back. And when I had finally finished, finally trailed off, waiting for some manner of insight, some kind of feedback, any sort of response, the clerk, without a rhythm of expression, said one word, responded with one word, and one word alone. Sorry. That was it. That was it. That was the sum total of assistance rendered from this person. The sum total of sympathy, empathy, of any interest in engaging in what could very well have been an emergency. Now I understand why. I know how easy it is to become jaded in a city like this. If anything, I'm demonstrating this to you. But I recall being even angrier at the utter apathy, the indifference, the borderline contempt of that clerk. Sorry, without being sorry at all. Reluctantly, I went to their freezer section. I bought the biggest bottle of water that I could. Had to pay the 10 cents deposit for it as well. And then I took it out the door, went back to the individual, still lying there, still perspiring, and I set it as close to him as I could with the crook of his arm there on the sidewalk and said, "There, bud, if you wake up there, you have something to help you get rehydrated if you need it." Now, mind you, I was speaking to someone who couldn't hear me, I assume. And at that point, not really knowing what else to do, I walked away, hoping that that was the right thing to do. This side of the mirror I will never know. The next time I was headed down that stretch of sidewalk, there was no one there. There also was not a chalk outline indicating that someone had been there, but had since been removed. There also wasn't an empty plastic bottle or even an untouched plastic bottle of water. That too was gone. So one hopes that he woke up and that while there was still a bit of coolness retained in that bottle, was able to use the water, jumpstart his system, and be on his way. One hopes. But the upshot to all of this, boys and girls, punks and skins, if you find yourself out there in the trenches, out there in the fields, and you encounter a situation, I realize it's one situation amongst 1,000, but if it's directly in your path and you really are left with no choice but to acknowledge it, to confront it, to do something about it, and you have the ethics and the decency, the basic integrity so to do, realize, D.I.Y. It's going to fall upon you to do whatever it's going to take to help the situation, to the best of your abilities, however limited those may be. Because if you turn around and ask anybody else for help, you are going to find yourself as helpless as the individual who you are trying to help. No, you're going to have to do it yourself. The odds are, the chances are, overwhelmingly so. Just be prepared to handle it on your own. You're probably not going to get any help from anybody.